Just really quickly on the background games. The first game, my opponent goes for a proxy marauder rush. I get lucky with the placement of my factory and I scout it out, react properly, get a bunker down, hold it no problem, wait for my expansion to take hold, and then double check to make sure he hasn't expanded. I scan him, I see him going for a double expand with 2 command centers. Following my rules, I know he's not going to have very many units. Move across the map, deliver the killing blow. If I had have let him take the double expansion, things would have been a little bit different in that game. He might have been able to catch up because I wasn't teching. I wasn't getting +1/+1 or anything like that. I was trying to focus on getting my units, my expansion properly saturated. So you're going to see that in the first game. In the second game, I get really unlucky. My opponent goes for a 4-gate with 2 gates proxied, 2 Colossus rush with a ward prism. His build was pretty goofy, but it caught me off guard. I didn't scout the gateways even though I double checked in that area, so he didn't put them up very early. He actually proxied them really late, which was weird. My factory actually floats. I see his ward prism, but it floats past his army, so I don't get a glimpse of the Colossus. And on my scan, when I scan his main base, I actually miss his Colossus den. So quite a few things worked against me in that one. It's unfortunate. I do lose the game. If you don't see the Colossus coming, you're pretty much screwed. I noticed this late expansion. I was prepared for a Blink Stalker all in. I was getting depots around my base. I cleared out a pylon. I was prepared for any kind of major gateway all in. I was prepared for, a Zealot Archon all in. It would have been good to go against all that stuff. Getting medevacs and stim and combat shield all made the correct decisions. I even had turret up for Dark Templar defense. Unfortunately, the 2 base Colossus play is more than enough to kill me off in that situation if I don't actually see it coming. So that's what you're going to see in the second game. My opponent essentially takes advantage of the fact that I don't have the tech to deal with what he has. Hey guys, it's Filter Starcraft here, and welcome back for episode number 16 of my Terran Bronze to Master series. It's been a long time since I've covered Terran, so hopefully you guys are still hungry for a little bit more, and I got a pretty good one for you that should help a lot with some problems I'm seeing people bring up. One of the biggest differences I see from a Diamond level player to a Master League player I'm going to cover here. And the idea behind this episode is how to deliver a kill shot, how to identify when you can deliver that kill shot, and taking advantage of that. So a big part of this is understanding that you have to look at your own replays and kind of see where you messed up, where you missed opportunities, where you had an advantage, you could kill your opponent, you could win the game, and how in StarCraft 2, when you're ahead, you don't always want to get more ahead. Sometimes you want to kill your opponent before he kind of swings another advantage on you. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Now, StarCraft 2 kind of revolves around 1, 2, or 3 base play. The addition of a 4th base is really only effective for Protoss and really only effective for Zerg because they can gain the additional gas. A lot of times you'll see Zerg going up to 5 geysers so they can fund that really late game high-tech army. Terran doesn't have that advantage, so you have to deliver a kill shot and maybe take out their 3rd base, maybe slow down their tech, that kind of stuff, before you kind of lead into a later game. The other thing about it is a 2-base Zerg is kind of dangerous, but not super dangerous. 2-base Protoss can still be very dangerous with various tech switches and stuff like that they can pull off. So it's really important to deliver a kill shot when you have the opportunity. A good example of that, and it's really easy and straightforward, is if the Protoss player does some kind of 2-base gateway attack on you, and you're prepared, you defend it, ready to go, then you send around and you take your 3rd base quietly and you try to get your max level Bile army, but you miss the fact that he's going Colossus. All of a sudden you don't have any Vikings to counter that Colossus, you go out to attack, or he comes and attacks you off 2 base, you die, you lose the game. So what you want to do is try to exploit the fact that he's going for Colossus, he probably doesn't have that many gateway units, deliver the kill shot, end the game, take the victory. When you reverse the circumstance, and if he's able to get to his Colossus army, he can first off defend and take a 3rd, but then he can possibly deliver a kill shot to you. So it's about finding that timing, exploiting it, taking full advantage of when you have the opportunity to win the game, making sure you rack up those W's when you have the opportunity and the chance to. It's not about sitting around, getting to 200, 200, and then attacking. With Terran, your biggest advantage is your mobility and how quickly your army swings. What I mean by a swing army is, if you have a small advantage with medevacs, your Marine Marauders can all go completely red, but the medevacs are going to heal them right back up. It's going to be like you have a brand new, fresh army, while your opponent's units are all dead. So it's really important to be able to take advantage of that. One of the most common things you'll hear about in other genre of games like MMOs is what's called the Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity is damage, tank, and healer. Same thing can be applied to Starcraft 2, just in a little bit different terms. Starcraft 2 has its own holy trinity. The Starcraft 2 holy trinity is tech, units, or expanding. Now what that means is your opponent can really only do 2 of those 3 things at once. So a good example of that is a 1 base all-in. 1 base all-in is usually tech, and it's usually a lot of units. There's no ability to expand in there. So when your opponent is going for 1 base Colossus play, he's going to have a whole bunch of gateway units. He's going to have 1 or 2 Colossus. He's not going to be able to afford to expand. He's not going to be able to afford to continue making pro production. Really, really simple and easy to follow. The other thing is, a good example of a expanding and teching with very light units is when Terran does a Hellion expand into Banshee play. So, you don't have a lot of meat, you don't have a lot of Marines, you don't have a lot of Marauders. You're actually very vulnerable to a powerful 2-base attack because you just don't have very many units. You have Banshees, which are great for harass, you have Hellions, which are great for map control, and you kind of use that to take advantage, but you don't have any meat behind you. So if you fail to take advantage of the map control with the Hellions and they're staying at your base, the Banshees maybe get pushed away, don't do any damage, your opponent comes across with a bunch of roaches, he's just going to kill you off. Really, really simple, easy to follow. So we're going to dive into the Starcraft 2 Holy Trinity, which again, tech, units, and expanding. We're going to look at how that functions and what each kind of section of that means your opponent is doing and where you're going to be capable of exploiting him and taking advantage of that. Now before we jump right into that part, I'm just going to say one thing right away. You have to assume you're equal or better than your opponent. When you're playing somebody on ladder, you're going to be about their skill level, possibly a little bit better. You're going to have strengths to your own game, and they're going to have strengths to their own game. When you're a macro style player, you can almost always assume that you're equal or better than your opponent if the game goes into a macro style play. So what I mean by that is, if you're a Gold League player and you practice this type of strategy against Master League player, you're just going to get smoked. And the reason for that is, Master League player is going to feel like he's able to do the 3 things at once, and you're not. It's simply not true. It's just that he's better at getting to the stage of the game where he can kind of, he's got his expansions up, he can start making units, he's been teching the whole time, he's going to feel like he's a better player. So when you're up on ladder, assume that you're equal or better than your opponent when you make these reads. Every now and then you're just going to run into somebody who is flat out better than you, and you're going to make the right read, make the correct decisions, you're going to make your attack, and you're just going to get crushed because your opponent's better than you. So don't worry if that happens to you. What you do want to make sure you're doing is making the correct reads and the correct decisions. If it looked like it was the correct read and correct decision, but your opponent just had a better economy than you, he was better at making his SCVs or his workers than you, then, you know what, doesn't matter, you lost the game because you have macro problems, not because of your decision making. You can make the right decision and still lose because your macro is bad. The first thing we're going to talk about is tech. Now, tech can be anything from going for fast Colossus, going for fast Templar, going for a quick +1/+1, going for Banshees, going for extremely fast Infestors and Mutas. That is all stuff that's under the tech tree. So when you're playing your own game, you have to remember that. If you are getting double upgrades, you're trying to get to Medivacs, or you're trying to get to Banshees, and you're trying to expand, you're not going to have very many units. Same thing applies to your opponent. If he's doing a lot of really early +1/+1 with Zerglings, he's not going to have very many Banelings to back it up. His Infestors are going to be there, that's probably what he's going to go for, but they're probably going to be a little bit delayed, so what you want to try to do is take advantage of that. Tech is one of the hardest areas to identify properly, but usually once you do, you can take advantage of it. So it's really important when you're facing a player that is using the tech part of it, you identify what he's trying to tech. You don't always have to match him, you don't have to try to match on upgrades all the time, but you have to figure out where you can take advantage of your opponent. Really good example is if somebody is teching really heavily, they're going for fast +1/+1 or even an extremely fast +2/+2, the chances of them attacking you are very, very small. You can usually take advantage of that by having a lot of units yourself and expanding. Really, really simple and straightforward. And then you can start teching. Then you can start catching up on upgrades. What you want to try to do is deny them their third base while maintaining your own third base. So it's really important that you identify when your opponent is teching and you're able to take advantage of that. So the next thing to look at are units. Now units is different than having a whole bunch of Zerglings, having a whole bunch of Zealots, having a whole bunch of Marines. When somebody's like that, usually they're trying to tech behind that, but it is actually a little bit difficult to expand as well. So you want to pay attention to what their composition looks like. If they have a lot of kind of low tier tech units, like a lot of Stalkers, blink or something like that can definitely be following up. So you want to be extra careful for that. That's probably going to be their tech choice. There's a whole bunch of zealots. Don't be too surprised to see really fast archons or really fast Templar to kind of back it up. It's really important that you identify if they have a lot of units, what they're kind of going for. Chances are if they have a ton of units in their Protoss, they're not going to have a third base. It's really, really simple and straightforward. Same thing applies to you as a Terran player. When you're on 3 barracks, it might feel like you have a lot of stuff, but you really don't. You have to conserve those units. You can't reproduce them fast. You want to be extra careful till you get up to that 5 barracks number, till you get up to the 7 barracks number, till you get up to the 9 barracks number. That's when you can start trading efficiently. If it's anything before that, you're going to struggle to do that. So pay attention to your opponent. See if he has a lot of units. If he doesn't, and he has, just a few stalkers, a few zealots, maybe a couple sentries, he's definitely teching behind that, and that's something you can take advantage of. Now, by teching, he could just be adding a lot of gateways, so you want to be able to pull out. He could be adding Colossus, he could be adding Templar, he could be taking his third base, all that stuff. But if he's short on units, it's one of the easiest areas to exploit, because you can just kill his units, and then kill him. Really simple and straightforward. But it's important to identify if he's making a lot of units, or if he's kind of skimping on that. Let's talk about expanding. In the really early game, once it gets to about 6 minutes, if they haven't expanded, they're probably doing a 1 base all-in. Very simple, straightforward. Once they go up to 2 bases though, it's not technically really still expanding. You want to be extra careful once you hit kind of 7 minutes, 8 minutes, if they're not trying to take a third. That's when you want to put your ears up a little bit, stay alert. Usually if your opponent hasn't taken a third base by 10 minutes, that's when he's spending all his money on tech, spending all his money on units. You may expect to see some sort of really powerful 2 base all-in. That is not an opponent you want to attack. Chances are if you attack into that while you're trying to take your own third base, you're really going to struggle to do any damage to him. You're going to struggle to beat him, you're going to struggle just with the game in general. So it's really important that you're extra careful about stuff like that.
Additional supply.
Now, one of the main things you're going to want to do is understand a unit composition to kind of an extreme level. If your opponent only has zealots, that means there's going to be some really high-tech units coming out behind that. If he only has zerglings, chances are he's going for some really high-tech units like infestors. So you want to kind of understand that. Same thing with a Terran player. When he has a lot of bio, and maybe not very many medevacs, or even if he has a bunch of medevacs, there's probably not going to be any tanks behind that. So it's really important to understand your opponent's unit composition, kind of what he's saying to you, how you read that, and then how you can kind of gather information to exploit his unit composition with your own, and exploit him within an attack. A good example is if a player has banelings, zerglings, and roaches, the chances of infestors or mutalisks coming up behind that, very, very small. However, his army in the current time is very strong, so you want to be careful engaging it. An opponent that is mostly zerglings, you want to try to take advantage of before he has infestors, before he manages to morph in a bunch of banelings, maybe snipe off a third. You're probably not going to deliver a killing blow to that player, but you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. Now, for the purpose of exploiting an opponent's weakness, your army has to be active. You can't just park your army at your home base and hope it's going to do okay. Once you get your medevacs out, you're moving across the map, you're looking around, you're clearing watchtowers, you're taking over map control. Now, at this point, you should have an idea of whether he took a third base or not, and this is where it's going to be really important to exploit your opponent's weakness. Now, if he's doing a really hardcore tech, but he doesn't quite have infestors out yet, he doesn't quite have Colossus out yet, you scan his natural, you see, okay, awesome, I don't see those units, I'm free to attack. You move in, you're careful to kind of dodge force fields, you take out his army, you deliver the killing blow. Awesome, good job, that's exactly how you want to play it out. Maybe you do scan, you see 2 Colossus, and there's no third base. Then you pull back, you start getting your Vikings, you start taking advantage of the fact that he doesn't have a third base and you do, and you make sure you keep an eye on his third base. If he goes to secure his third base, scan his army, if you can kill it, kill his army, kill his third, pull back. Take advantage of where he's weak. It's really, really important. It's actually extremely difficult to do, but this is one of the biggest differences you will see between an amateur player playing in Diamond League, a good Masters player playing in Master League, and a pro. When you watch a replay or a cast of a professional player playing, he very rarely will miss when his opponent is weak and he can kill him off. That's one of the biggest differences between a really good high quality player and somebody who is just kind of learning the game and feeling themselves out. I'd classify myself in the category of somebody who's just learning the game and feeling it out. I think we're all kind of there, but what you want to do is start trying to exploit your opponent as much as you possibly can, and get to that stage where you say, okay, cool, so my opponent's teching, his 2-2's not finished yet, I just finished my 1-1, but I know he's going to have 2-2 soon, I know he's going to start having Templars soon, so I want to take advantage of this timing. This is when he's most vulnerable to me. If I don't attack now, he's going to have the advantage, and I'll be on the back foot. So you go ahead, you take an advantage, you're able to deliver the killing blow, you take your opponent out before his 2-2 even becomes a factor. It's one of the most difficult things to do, but it's something you have to be able to do and do correct. Now, all this is great, there's a lot of theory here, there's a lot of things that are like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but you get into a real game, and you don't have any scans, you haven't scouted, you don't know when you took his third base, that's where you're going to really struggle. So what you want to start doing is, when you're getting ready to kind of take your third base, save your scans to attack, make sure that you're going to know what his army looks like, you're going to know what his upgrades are, you're going to know what his tech is, before you engage. That way you can just pull back to your own base, get what you need to get, go back and attack, or if he doesn't have something that can take out your army, you can just kill him off. You have to utilize scans. Scans are absolutely your money. Landing a good scan on your opponent's army is one of the best ways you're going to essentially win the game. The important thing to remember as Terran with a bio, when you're out on the map and you're moving around, unless you just move your army into his without paying attention, he can't really do much to you. It's going to be very difficult for him to flank your army because it's so fast, unless he's a Zerg player with only Zerglings, but even then your army should chew that up. So you want to keep in mind that your Terran army can move around the map completely freely, and you're going to be okay. You're always going to be able to pull back to your reinforcements, you're always going to be able to try to get tech up before he's able to cross the map and attack you and kill you, if you're kind of pressuring and poking him. So what you want to do is get out, clear the watchtowers, maybe check for an observer over top of your army, and get in position to attack. When you're ready to attack, and your army is over by his base, throw up a scan on his natural, or throw up a scan on his third even if you want. Make sure you know where his army is, what it's comprised of, and make sure if you go in to fight that, you win that fight 100% of the time. Don't go into a fight if you think, well, it's about a 60% chance I win this, because remember, he's going to be bringing in reinforcements. He could have a late tech unit to the party that could absolutely destroy you. So it's really important you're going to win that fight very easily when you're going for that killing blow, or when you're going to kill off his third base. So just throw up a scan, make sure you save them when you're moving out to attack. If your money's going to start building up because you're going to have 3 bases. It really doesn't matter if you have scans or not at that point, or it really doesn't matter if you have mules or not at that point. Scans are much more valuable because they're what's going to win you the engagement. So when you're outside his natural, throw up the scan. Okay, cool. Do a quick count of his units. Yeah, I got this. Make sure you click on a unit, check his upgrades, because if he's 2-2 and you're 1-0, you're going to have a really hard time with that fight. So it's really important that you're always in position to take full advantage of that and exploit your opponent. Take advantage of him if his army's not very strong and you think you can win. What good does it do you if your opponent sits there, techs up, gets Colossus, gets fast upgrades, gets to 170-ish, 160-ish supply, when you get to 200 and you attack and his army is just flat out better than yours and you lose the game? It doesn't do you any good, right? So what you want to do is be out on the map, moving, figuring out that, okay, well, he's trying to get Colossus, he's trying to get +1/+1 and +2/+2. He really doesn't have very much. I can kill him now and just go kill him. It's a really simple concept. As long as you scan his army before you attack, you're going to know exactly what's there. In 90% of the situations, you're going to be in great shape. This is really important. Save those scans, scan your opponent, see what he has, attack him, hopefully kill him off. Now the other thing you want to do is understand your own weakness and why it makes you weak. What I mean by that is, same thing with your opponent and the Holy Trinity. He can only do 2 of those 3 things at once. You can also only do 2 of those 3 things at once. So if you're trying to get +1/+1 on your bio, you're trying to get medevacs out, you only have 3 barracks and you're taking your third base all at the same time, you're really not going to have very many units. Yes, you can still be active on the map, but you want to be extra careful about attacking, because realistically, you just don't have a lot. If you lose those units in the attack, you can't reinforce, you can't defend yourself. So it's really important to understand how you're weak and what is making you weak. A really good example of something that can really help you out a lot is adding on that 4th and 5th barracks first before you go out to attack, and then throwing down your 3rd command center as you go out. What that does is your army is about as strong as it's ever going to be, minus the reinforcements, right? Because you've already added the extra barracks, you've already made the extra units, you're not trying to do too much at once, you're not missing a few marine cycles to squeeze in that command center. It's about as good as it's going to get, right? And then when you go to throw that third base down, and you're making it as you move out on the map to attack, your army is going to be about as strong as it possibly could be when you get to his base, as well as you're taking a third. If you take the third, and you try to secure it, and then move out, you're giving the opponent, your opponent the advantage because you're not able to make units, tech, and expand at the same time. So it's really important that how you time out your own third base, and you understand your own weaknesses. Again, if you're trying to get +1/+1, you're trying to get +2/+2 really quickly, you're trying to get medevacs, you're trying to get siege tanks, you're trying to get all this stuff at once, you can't attack. You're just not going to have any units. So it's really important you understand what makes your army and your current style of play strong, and what makes your opponent's current style of play strong. Because as soon as you understand that, you can start kind of fine-tuning things and dealing the killing blows that normally you would miss. One of the last things I want to talk about is killing your opponent's third versus killing your opponent completely. If you're in a situation where you've taken your third base kind of late, so you've taken it after you move out, is when you started it, a lot of those times you can actually kill your opponent if he tries to take his third base. But it's really important you understand what you're trying to accomplish when you go in for your attack, and you're happy with the damage that you do. And then you're able to regroup, let the damage take hold, and then go back in and finish him off. So, really good example of this is if you're facing a Protoss or even a Zerg player, when they take that fast third base, you're like, okay, I know you're taking it, I know that won't take hold just yet, I'm going to have the advantage in tech, I'm going to have the advantage in army, I'm going to take full advantage of that, I'm going to kill you completely. It's really easy to do. So when you move out across the map, you scan his army, awesome, you can handle it no problem. His army is very weak because he's been trying to attack and expand behind it. Just go kill him, knock him off. Really simple concept. The other thing, when you decide that you're going to attack your opponent's third and kill it off, there's no point in attacking and killing a third base of your opponent if you're not taking one yourself. That's kind of the idea. When your opponent goes to take his third base as a Terran player, you're like, okay, cool. You kind of start moving out with your army and your composition. Then you take your own third base. You can go kill off his third base, maybe kill part of his army, and then pull back, regroup, let your own third base, and let the damage you just did to him take hold before going back and finishing the job. It's really important you understand what you're trying to accomplish and why when you go to attack your opponent to either kill him or kill his third. You have to know why you're trying to do a certain thing in a certain situation, and you have to understand what his army composition means and how you're going to be able to take advantage of that in a fight. And maybe sometimes you're trying to attack, you're trying to expand, you have to play passive. Hey, that's cool. But remember, if you're not trying to do like hardcore attack and go for everything all at once, you're going to be able to get out there, do a lot of damage to your opponent, deal the killing blow, maybe kill off his third. This part is probably the most important part. I spoke a lot about the Holy Trinity, how tech, units, and expanding cannot all be done at the same time. What you need to understand is that you're not instantly going to go, okay, he's teching, okay, he's making units, and make the right read every single time. The game just doesn't work like that. A lot of it is built from experience and built from gaining knowledge with scans. So it's really important that if you do have a few games where you move out to attack your opponent, you think you have the advantage, he crushes your attack, counterattacks, and you lose the game, that you learn from that. So win or lose, look at all of your replays, see why he was able to crush your army, so you can avoid that mistake in the future. You go, okay, cool, I see, he wasn't really teching behind that, he just had a lot of gateways, that's why he's able to kill my army and then cross the map and kill me. If I didn't attack in there though, my tech advantage would have taken hold and I would have had a really easy time killing off my opponent. That's pretty cool, I understand that. And when you go ahead and you look at the replay of games you lose, and you lose it at 35, 40 minutes or whatever it is, and you watch that replay and you say, oh man, at 15 minutes or at 14 minutes, I had a way better army, I could have just gone and killed him, what was I thinking? Try to fix that the next time. Figure out what made that situation happen, and then figure out how you're going to turn that into a killing blow the next time you play. So when you're playing that Protoss player who plays really passive, takes a third base, you take your third base a little bit later, his tech's better, then he swings way ahead because he goes for his units extremely late, but he gets a lot of them and a lot better ability to reinforce them with better upgrades, and that's why you lost at 25 minutes. But you could have killed him any time at 20 minutes and below. You want to make sure you're taking full advantage of those situations. So just watch your replays, decide, check your macro, make sure your macro was on point, make sure you made the SCVs, make sure you got your upgrades when you wanted, make sure you weren't floating a ton of money, and then check your opponent and see when you would have been able to kill him, when a good time to attack would have been, when maybe a good time to have killed off his third versus going for the killing blow on your opponent would have been. It's really important you analyze, not necessarily, well, I lost because he had Colossus. Analyze, you lost because you didn't attack before he had Colossus. Try to figure out the weaknesses and exploit the timings of your opponent. And the last thing is, never find yourself in a situation where you go, well, there was nothing I could have done, I couldn't kill him at any point in the game. That's not true for anybody. There's always situations where you could have killed your opponent, or you had holes in your own play that caused you to have weaknesses that he was able to exploit, or you had holes in your own play that caused weaknesses that made it so that you could not exploit your opponent. Never analyze a game and go, well, there's nothing I could do. When you go ahead and take a look at those replays, figure out when you could have killed him, make sure you eliminate your own mistakes first, so you know, oh man, I didn't add those extra barracks and I was floating a lot of money. I could have had another 20 Marines in that fight, would have won it easily. As soon as you figure that out, you'll be in a lot better shape. But make sure you're utilizing those scans, make sure you're checking ahead, and then deciding if you're going to try to kill your opponent, if you're going to try to take his third, or you're going to exploit another advantage that you might have. But don't miss the opportunities to kill your opponent, because you're going to find you're going to lose a lot of games where you simply could have just won the game at a different point in time. It's really important to take advantage of those. This is Filter Starcraft. You can follow me on Twitter, MattFilterSC, I believe. And you can check out my stream. It's twitch.tv/FilterSC. Obviously my YouTube channel is right here. If you have any questions, comments, hit me up on Twitter, or you can hit me up on Team Liquid. I answer all my private messages there. Have a good one, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It's a pretty cool one. It's a really difficult concept to understand, but you should be able to get it now.